Hi, I'm Chef Juan. I'm the executive chef at 1905 Bar and Grill, and today we're going to be breaking down a hamachi. All right. So this particular hamachi's from the Pacific, and this is sushi grade. We get flown in, and we use it for our Peruvian ceviche. All right. So when breaking down the fish, it's very important that if it comes in frozen, you adequately defrost it. And if it comes in fresh, you want to try to keep it as fresh as possible. However, this particular fish, hamachi, yellowtail, kampachi, depending on its size or where it's coming from, it's also very important to first analyze the fish and kind of get a feel for it. You still want it to smell good, obviously, but one thing that I know, there's a whole bunch of parameters that people can get very technical about. However, for me, it's fish should smell like the ocean. All right, it's coming from the ocean, and I also get a lot of comments like, "Oh, the fish it tastes fishy." Well, fish shouldn't taste fishy. It should taste like the ocean. Fish taste to whatever they eat. It's based on their diet, right? So if you have a very fatty fish that eats like sardines, well, obviously you're gonna have it's gonna be a little bit more oily, such and such. All right. Now, in regard to yellowtail particularly, I have huge respect for this species. The reason I have a lot of respect for this species is because we fish it in Baja all the time, all right? And this is a pelagic species that essentially, at least in Baja, it eats a lot of sardines, and it'll literally eat anything. God, yellowtail will even eat yellowtail. Their only purpose in life is to essentially reproduce themselves, all right? But as the hot summer months come along and bait fish are more scarce, they will literally eat any other small fish, which is very particular. However, with hamachi, you really want to control its diet, and what you're looking for, and we'll get into it, it's a fatty content, all right? Here particularly, we use it for our Peruvian ceviche, which is a very interesting dish that actually came about in a very natural, organic way. Let's go back into the history of 1905. So initially, when we were designing the menu for 1905, we wanted to put things on the menu that made sense to Imperial Valley. Anything that would highlight the product, the agricultural heritage in the Imperial Valley, we wanted to showcase on our menu. Now, having a conversation with the Elmores, just sitting at the bar, he was talking about his recent trip to Peru. He was mentioning that he actually grew Peruvian limes, and he was one of the most important Peruvian lime growers here in the Imperial Valley. And having the access to very high-end fish, and now having the Peruvian ceviches that outside of Peru, we're getting him right here in our backyard, right? And then speaking to El Don and the cultivation and the growing of red onions, it was naturally something that we had to put on the menu. Then we also grew a relationship with Ernie, and he is now getting us our fresh herbs, and they're right here across the street from us. So this dish has 4 components that are right here from Imperial Valley, although the dish is from Peru, okay? So we'll get down to the breaking down of it. A lot of people like to use gloves. I don't like to use gloves because I want to get a sense of the fish. I want to make sure it's still oily but not slimy. I want to get into the crivets, see if there's any pin bones that are coming out. I like to run my hands through the fish, but just fragilely, I'm not smushing into it. I just want to get a sense of its fatty content, its texture, and then we'll get right into it. Okay, so first off, we're going to turn it around. I like to use a towel just to kind of damp it. I don't want to get any of the natural oils out, but I want it to be nice and secure on the cutting board, so I'm not, it's not moving all over the place. Also, my cutting board's nice and secure. Especially when you're dealing with sharp knives, you want your cutting board to be nice and secure. All right, let's see. This is a Deba knife. This is particularly used for fish butchering. It has a lot of weight to it. You don't need a Deba knife. I like to use it just because it's easier. However, if you have a chef's knife, it's perfectly fine. Now, first thing, we're going to get into the collar, okay? And we're going to cut right into it, okay? Then we're gonna go down here. There you go. One thing I'd like to showcase here is the fatty content. If you look at here and I press, this is all omegas. This is all your omegas and your essential oils that you're buying from the grocery store. And although a lot of people like to discard this, I feel like the collars are one of the best pieces of this fish. Particularly, I grill them at home, deep fry them, but grilled just olive oil, salt, they're delicious. So I always like to show to leave it on the side and just for a Scooby snack for the kitchen crew. Or if we have any VIPs, we'll try to do something with it. But yeah, every time we go fishing, what we try to do, we try to hold them to the side. And it's a quick little gift. I mean, if you have a couple fishes and we put the collars on the side, it's very easy just to gift them. The other thing that I like to do, and this is just my classical training, it reminds me when I was like a prep cook, I like to showcase all of my pieces here just so that my chef would always come back and sees like, okay, what's the trimmage, what's the loss? And as you'll see right now, there's gonna be minimal loss to this fish, okay? And then we're gonna turn it back around and we're gonna identify where the spine is at. You're gonna get to see the rib cage and all the way to the back, okay? Now, we're gonna run this knife right along this rib cage right here, okay? And then just drag all the way to the back. It's very important to note that with anything in culinary, you start with a big piece and then you slowly break it down into smaller pieces. And we'll be able to showcase this right here. Now, another thing I want to pinpoint right here is you'll be able to see, and that's why I'm not wearing gloves, I can sense where the pin bones are at. And another thing, I want this bloodline right here is what carries all of those like very fishy, it carries all that fishy taste. And it's very important for us to distinguish it from the rest of the knife, because from the rest of the fish, because if you don't want it, you want to be able to remove this and you'll be able to eliminate that. We're going to put this side right over here. Okay, and what we're gonna do next is I'm gonna start breaking down through the rib cage. Hold on, this is not the appropriate button. Okay, all right, we're gonna get right under, and I'm gonna try to just trim that rib cage as best as I can. Okay. The other thing I like to showcase, I like to have a damp towel so I can wipe my knife between every stroke. And then I also like to have a dry towel so I can also wipe if it gets really slimy or wet or vice versa. Also, what I'm using, this is my favorite slicing knife. I like to use it for breaking down the fish. Okay, so once we're here, I'll start noticing that some pieces are starting to flake off. Then what I'm gonna do next is make sure I got all the pinpoints out. We're gonna do a small incision back here, okay? You're not gonna cut through the skin, you're just gonna cut right out. This is another point in the fish butchering process where this is a little Scooby snack for myself or for the cooks, but this is where I see the quality of the fish. I like to touch it, and also I like to taste it, so I eat it. Now here, what you want to do, you want to get right in between the flesh and the skin. And then a lot of people like to do here, but with practice, honestly, all you have to do is let the knife do the work and then pull the skin back and let the knife do the work. And as you can see, it's perfectly fine. With the skin, it's also another treat. We like to do a chicharron here. We just throw it in the deep fryer, throw some tahini and lime juice, and it's a nice little treat. So as you butcher down your fish, you get small little treats, okay? Now, going back to the sline right here, I'm just gonna start cutting it into smaller pieces. It's gonna be easier to maneuver. And as you can see, we're gonna go ahead and exchange this, and we're gonna put this here. Same thing here. We're gonna go back and get as many of those pin bones that we spoke about. They're right along this line. I'm just gonna drag my knife all the way to the back. Okay. This is that bloodline we were talking about, and it's got that really fishy smell. At home, honestly, I just eat it. It doesn't do anything for me. As long as it pinpoints, I'm perfectly fine with it. But for whoever doesn't want that fishy taste, you can just go ahead and remove it, okay? Now, as you see, every stroke, I'm cleaning my knife. And we're gonna go back to that incision. Another quick story, another Scooby snack. So when it comes to pelagic species, these are fish on top of the food chain in the ocean, okay? So think about it. Bigger fish eat smaller fish, and smaller fish eat other smaller fish, and so on and so forth. But this living being, well, it's in the ocean, and a lot of people have the misconception that when you go out in the ocean and you're just gonna throw a hook down there with some bait, you're gonna catch it, try to extract it, and it's leisure. But it's really not. When it comes to at least Yellowtail, they will fight for their life. They are smart, and they will literally try and fight you, right? And what that means is when you have them on the hook, they're trying to either go dive down right into the rocks, they're trying to go left, they're trying to go right, and that's where the fishing techniques come into play. But what that taught me, at least as a culinarian, was that this is a living being, and we owe them some respect, right? We want to make sure that their life was taken in a, I don't want to say it's like, I want to say in a sacred way, but to me, it's just, I've developed this respect for the fish, and I want to treat it with respect because through fishing, I've been able to have this relationship with fish. To me, it's a hobby, but also an experience to learn about their diet and what they eat. When I go fishing, I go right into the butchering process with the fishermen and try to break down my own fish. I will open up the guts, see what's in it. I like to smell it, like anything that will tell me something more about the fish, right? And it's very interesting when you cut into the guts and see what they've been eating on. And it's funny because we use this bait, we call them irons, and they're biting into an iron. Can you imagine how hungry you have to be in order to bite into a fake iron? Obviously, they're not perceiving it that way, but these fish have definitely grown a lot of respect. But also, it's like the way we cook it. Like this fish is typically not cooked. However, I've learned ways to cook it just from the fishermen. That's another thing I hold a lot of respect for the fishermen, because they do have these homemade recipes that they've been perfecting over the years just because of the abundance of fish or the lack of, right? You don't always get this perfect fillet like you do in the grocery store. Sometimes you get the collars and you have to make a meal out of the collars, or, the belly, there's still skin right here. I've heard stories from the fishermen that they actually take the carcass, they will steam it, and then they will flake off all of this, right, and turn it into like a fish machaca. It's really inexpensive, but in the middle of the winter when the fishing is down, they're eating this type of stuff, right? They don't have sometimes the luxuries that we do in the city, but obviously it's extreme. But like I said, it's ways to be creative and to use every piece of the fish. So we're gonna go back here and we'll go through it one more time. All right, you're gonna get right in between the skin and the flesh. I don't know if you can, Yep, okay. And then I'm just holding pressure for now until I get a good grip. And then once I get a good grip, you're just gonna glide the knife and let the knife do the work as I'm working the skin out, okay? And you'll be able to seal the skin. See all these oils? Like this is all good stuff. This is healthy, right? Now I'm gonna go ahead and wipe. Like I said, don't worry about getting the bloodline right now. This is a simpler technique, okay? Perfect. I'm gonna do some trimmage here that I missed the pin bone, okay? So again, I'm showcasing all of my trimmage here because obviously it's not perfect. Even when you're a chef, sometimes your knife goes a different way. A lot of people are scared. It's like, oh, it's fishy. It's perfectly fine. It's just wash your hands, There's nothing wrong. Just wash your hands. And I've learned this the hard way. Obviously in professional kitchens, we try to be like super pristine about it. But when you're in the middle of the ocean and you're in a freaking fishing boat, you don't have that luxury. You don't have the luxury of having gloves and, you know, the best knives. It's like, you really don't. You have the salt water, you have a knife. You want to try to use the fish. A lot of times we do sashimi. But yeah, anyways, now that I have it broken down here, what we do is we can do a couple different things. We can do a tiradito, which is we slice it. However, what we do, we dice it, okay? And before we do that, like I said, we're breaking things down to smaller and smaller pieces, okay? You see, this is nice little fat content, but that's the bloodline we were talking about. Okay. I'm gonna go back here. You can distinguish right here from the bloodline, and I'm just gliding my knife. I'm not putting a lot of pressure into it because it's literally doing its own job. That's why it's very important to always have a sharp knife. The knife will do the job for you, okay? Now here, we can just go here. Okay, nice little trimmage. Also, it's very important to have a sharp knife because it's the initial process of breaking down the proteins, right? So this, if you look, it's like perfectly fine. Now here's where we start getting a little bit more technical. So now that we're here, I like to start giving it some shape because we're going to be dicing it. So there's a lot of pieces, a lot of little pieces that we aren't particularly going to use. But that's why I don't like to use gloves because it's just attached to the fish. I can just remove it with my hand without having to use my knife. It's perfect. The other thing, and this is just something that I've learned over the years, it's a lot easier to cut, especially if you don't have a sharp knife, through the skin side of the fish instead of using, because this can start flaking off. But if you're going this way, like I said, you want to start working into rectangles, okay? Now we have that. Okay, same thing here. We're going to turn it over. So once we're here, we have a perfect rectangle. And depending what, you could do a couple different things. Like we can slice from here if we want to do that, right? So we can have that cut, like for a tiradito. However, what we're going to do here is we're going to dice it, okay? Again, I'm going to do about a 1/2 inch cube. Let the knife do the work, especially when you have a long blade. I'm trying to use as much of the blade as possible. I'm not just working the belly of the knife. A lot of people do this. It's not a serrucho. What do you call a serrucho? A saw?
Yeah.
It's not a saw, right? That's why you have so much blade. And you can start from the heel of the knife and then glide, okay? Or you can start from the tip and then just glide your knife. And as you can see as well, I'm also using my fingers as I cut into the fish. Okay? That's why I feel it's so important that we learn how to cook with 2 hands, because a lot of times we want to do everything with our right hand. And in a professional kitchen, every time you drop the knife, it's seconds. And seconds turn into minutes, minutes turn into hours. So again, here, we're going to go here. And then 1/2 inch cube, 1/2 inch cube. Perfect. Okay, now I want to show you something else real quick. Here's where you can get your tiradito. So this is like fish bacon. This is what's all the belly. This is all the belly. Because you have the fat content, like I said. And here, you can do a couple things. I like to do this in like sashimi style. I'll cut it diagonally. I consider ourselves lucky in the restaurant or even when we go fishing to have the abundance of fish. I like to do them a little thicker than the traditional like Japanese cuts just because we have abundance of fish, right? This is more sashimi style, then we'll do a tiradito style, okay? This is a mixture of culinary techniques with fisherman techniques. One thing that was very interesting or that I learned when I would go fishing is that the first time I went fish butchering, I just dove right into it. I didn't really, I mean, I knew what to do, classically trained, but then when I started noticing the fishermen, I started breaking down the fish, and they'd be like, why the hell are you doing that? Why are you doing that way? This is way more efficient, you know? And it was a learning curve, because sometimes you think that because you went to culinary school or whatever, you think you know best, but honestly, I got schooled and I was like, you're right. We can use this way. You can use that way. And I think it's just interesting to put things into different perspective. As culinarians, we're always trying to learn. We're always trying to see different things. And sometimes we just overcomplicate ourselves with different techniques, or trying to evolve a dish or refine it. When sometimes it's like, hey, just try to do things a little bit more simple. Just try to refine whatever you have available. Try to use the ingredients that are relatively close to you. Now for the tail, it's got a lot of tissue in there. It doesn't really, I mean, it obviously affects flavor. However, for me, I like to say it's texture, right? You can't always get a perfect loin. You can't always have the fish be this pristine, fresh. I'll do the tail that way. So I invite people to learn from the fish, and like different parts of the fish, just like a different part of cattle would have different flavors, just like the tenderloin has different flavor than in New York, or ribeye. It's exactly the same thing with fish. I like to smoke it. Deep fry is always great. You can never go wrong with deep frying. I think another good way of, I like to cure my fish. For every 1 liter of water, 35 grams of salt, and that replicates seawater. It's gonna preserve freshness. It's also gonna expand the life, especially if you're throwing it in the freezer. For me, what fishing does, it exposes us to different species. It's not just going out there as a hobby. It's family. It's learning. I have 3 younger brothers, and we all fish. And some more than others, but at the end of the day, it's like a family activity we like to do. Another thing, let's see, clean as you go, obviously. We always like to keep, especially when you're at home, you want to keep your station nice and sanitized and clean. And we have all the trimmage here. These are mostly bloodlines. As you can see, there's very minimal trimming. These are great, actually, dog treats. My dogs love them. Ask your vet, though. I mean, fishing villages, dogs eat them all the time. So I give them to my dogs. They love it, but yeah.
The what? Chicken
wing of the sea. It's something I just made up. It doesn't really have, I don't know if it has a technical term, but a lot of times what I'll do, I'll just cut right into it. Maybe it's more precise than that. But I like to call this the chicken wing of the sea. And it's got a lot of tissue like a chicken wing. Then I'll deep fry it. And I haven't thrown buffalo sauce on it, but I've thrown a lot of like dry rubs on it. And I'll just eat it like a chicken wing. But yeah, then going back to the collar, if I'm grilling, what I'll do, I'll put some butcher's twine and just hang it over the grill. And then I'll have all those aromatics from the wood, the essential oils of the woods come up. And it's a nice little treat. Obviously, like you have to kind of work your way around it, like if you would have like a chicken leg. But it's great. I mean, it's got some bones. It's nothing that will like make you choke or anything, but this is high quality fish. It's got the highest concentration of fat and good fat, healthy fat. Yeah, this is good stuff. This is high quality. It's one of the things that always caught my attention because in my naiveness, and I thought that Mexican food was predominant in all of Latin America, and it comes to find out that Peru has great cuisine. And these cooks taught me a lot, more than I could have ever imagined. And I've been enamored by it. I think that Peruvian ceviche is, at least here, is completely underestimated. And yeah, of course, like Baja ceviche and Mexican ceviche is great. And our guys from Sinaloa are doing a great job there. However, doesn't mean it's the best. It doesn't mean that we can't be open to other things. One of the chiles that I believe it's highly underutilized. Right now we have it in a jar. You can find it at your local grocery store, or if you can't find it, just look it up on Amazon. But it's called ají amarillo. Right now we have it in this form, but I'm going to show you a couple things in regards to this. Okay.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Other than for like sanitary reasons, why do you put the fish on ice? Like, what does it change? Does it change like its firmness or like?
Yeah, it will start denaturing as you expose it to heat or acid, and you want to try to keep it as cool as possible. Yeah. You really don't want to expose it to heat unless you're cooking it. Okay. You also want to try to manipulate it in a way that you're not exposing it to room temperature for an extended amount of time. But also, this is what I learned. It changes people's perception of the fish being fresh. If it's cold, people think it's fresh. If it's at room temperature, like, oh, this is like, it's slimy, you know? So yeah, so it's something just I've, tools of the trade. Okay, so what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna start with some salt, okay? I'm gonna throw a couple pieces of garlic in there. And one more, why not? Okay, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a couple the spoonfuls of our ají amarillo. I like a lot of it, but that's just me. And then what I'll do here is I will cut onion. And I want to try to cut the onion to about the same size as the garlic. I want to try to keep everything nice and consistent. Okay. You're going to do a quarter of the onion. Okay. And then we're going to leave this for later, We want to wipe down our knife, cutting board. And then with the limes, I just want to get the cheeks, okay? And then you just want to squeeze. You don't want to get any of the seeds in there, but you just want to squeeze them. Try to get those oils from the lime. Discard it. And it's not, I'm not smashing into the lime and trying to get every ounce of the liquid in there. I just quick tap out, quick tap out. Another thing that I do, I put a couple ice cubes because the blender does generate heat. So I want to try to keep it as cool and unison as possible. The garlic will assist with the emulsification of the leche de tigre, which actually that's what it's called, the leche de tigre. Also, what I like to do, I learned from my fellow Peruvian chefs, is add a couple of pieces of fish in there. Just a tap. Doesn't have to be crazy. Okay. Now, the other thing that I learned is you want to pulse it. You don't want to just make it at full speed. Like, you really want to... That's it. That's all you need. We're going to taste it. Yep. Spicy. It's hint of garlic, hint of onion. So now I like to keep the ají on hand just in case I want to add a dab and I want to make it a little bit more spicy. Okay, I want to try to keep the bowl as cold as possible. I'm going to take all of my pre-diced fish. It's nice and cool. Okay. Now what I'll do is I'm going to drop a couple drops of olive oil. It's not much. It's just enough for me to coat the fish. Okay. And then we're going to hit it with some salt. Okay. And I just kind of fold it and let it sit there. Now, as soon as I add the acid, it's going to start denaturing. Then while I do that, I want to grab some fresh onion. Then we're going to do it because we want some nice julienne red onion. We want everything to be able to be highlighted. Okay. We put some julienne onion. That should be more than enough. Okay. Beautiful. There we go. Then I like to feather them just a tad. Okay. Da, 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 da. So now this is where it's kind of oxidized. So I'm going to grab my leche de tigre and I'm going to strain it through it. Okay. Now here, I'll just try to work. This is more in regards to texture. Some people like it like that, but I like to just have the pure extraction of flavor. And again, this is like culinary techniques / fisherman techniques. I like to always showcase the Peruvian ceviche, at least here locally, because I feel it just doesn't get enough love. But you're more than welcome to use some of these techniques for traditional Mexican ceviche. Now here, it's very important that I start folding my fish into the leche de tigre. Okay, the more you leave it in there, the more it'll start denaturing. So make sure you're ready to serve. We'll grab some, one single piece. We'll grab some. Peruvian friends would be proud. Strip on the center of the plate. Then we'll start pouring our leche de tigre. Now here, what I like to do, I like to hit it with some raw onion right over the top. Okay. I like it a little bit thicker. That's just my personal preference. Okay. Just because my dices of fish are a little bit bigger. And then typically cilantro would be added somewhere in the curing process. However, here, since we just had it freshly cut from Ernie's farm right across the street, it's nice and pungent. So I'm just going to keep it in its natural format. We have micro cilantro here and it's nice. Now we're going to add some freeze-dried corn, which gives it texture. Okay. And then we're going to hit it with a whole bunch of like fresh micro cilantro right here from Imperial Valley. This is just... All of it is fresh, all of it is local, from within a 100-mile radius. So, yeah.
1, 2, 3.
And this is our version of our Peruvian ceviche.